that there's not much overlap in our presentations, from what I saw, there is no overlap, which is good. Yeah. Although I agree with many of the things that we said, and you'll see some of your points here as well. I will not expand on the emotion regulation framework, etc. This is probably my first attempt to link identities and emotions and see how identities and emotions can be both seen from a more social, more historical perspective, rather than a very personal and subjective perspective. And I will say a lot more about that in a while. And as Peter said, I work at the University of Essex and in the Department of Language and Linguistics, and we also have an interesting research center in the department. It's the Center for Language Development Throughout the Lifespan. And we look at 3 different phases of our lives and of how we learn languages. So the first one is first language acquisition. And then we have second language learning and teaching. And the third one, which is also very interesting, is language impair and language loss. And we have people in the department who work in each of these 3 strands. So I am part of the second strand, obviously, second language learning and teaching, and I work very closely with teacher trainees, the majority of whom are not native speakers of English, and they are teaching English as a foreign language, most of them for the first time in their lives, through the MA TESOL program, so that's quite challenging. I use the term non-native speaker, although I don't really like it, and I will say a little bit about that and the identities of these 2 groups of teachers in a while. So just to give you an idea of what I will be covering, there are 2 main themes, identities and emotions. And within the first one, identities, I will talk about teacher identities and non-teacher identities. In one of Sam's excerpts from your research, someone said that there is frustration in my professional life and also in my personal life, something like that. So I will touch upon these 2 domains and talk a little bit about educational and personal values and what does being professional mean. And you see that professional is in inverted commas because people say that being professional does not entail being emotional or showing emotion. And how much emotion should we show? And are there boundaries, limits with relation to how much we are expected to show? And the second theme is emotions and what emotions do, how people and teachers labor emotionally. So there is a theory about that. And the last one is something that I have very recently started looking at, this concept of emotional capital. So how can we capitalize on the emotions that we experience in the classroom, outside of class, throughout our lives really, professional and personal, how we can learn from them and how we can use them to better cope with those emotions if they emerge again, or other emotions that we also find very challenging to deal with. So I start with a definition of language teacher identities, and this comes from Gary Barthuizen's most recent book on language teacher identities. So this definition is in a box in one of the pages. It's a quite large box actually, in his introductory chapter to this edited volume, and he includes in his definition all of these aspects. So this is the most up-to-date definition, that's why I have included it here. So what he actually suggests is that language teacher identities are cognitive, social, emotional, ideological, and historical. So they are both within the teacher, both inside the teacher, but also outside in the world. And here we refer to the classrooms, we refer to the staff room. That's a context that is not studied much, really. So we tend to focus on what is taking place in the classroom, but it's also interesting to look at how teachers collaborate, what ideas they exchange, and how they also feel outside of class. So he also suggests that language teacher identities refer to being and doing, feeling and imagining and storing. And the last one, storing, is also connected with his ideas, his research ideas about using narratives as data collection tools. Narratives in different forms, so these could be written narratives, like personal diaries or journals, or oral narratives in the form of interviews, that we interview teachers, we interview learners, and we find lots of interesting things that they do. They are struggle and harmony, and this works in two different ways. So they are contested and resisted by ourselves as teachers and by others, but they are also accepted and acknowledged again by ourselves as teachers and by other people. He says that they are dynamic and multiple, so they are not static, they keep changing. And they change short-term and over time. So either discursively in social interaction with others, but also in material interaction in how we interact with different places, with different objects, in different spaces, etc. So it's a quite long quote actually, and I have tried to break it down into different aspects. And thinking of ourselves as teachers, I have put here teachers as central hub. So this doesn't mean that we only focus on ourselves as teachers and we neglect our students, yeah? It doesn't mean that. Still, all these ideas about learner-centeredness, learner-centered teaching are all still valid and applicable, but what I want to focus on today is the importance of understanding ourselves in order to be better able to understand others, okay? So understanding our identities and our emotions. So thinking of ourselves as teachers, we manage relationships and interactions with three different groups of people. I have listed just these three, and they are all related to our jobs, yeah? So we interact, and we need to manage the interactions that we have with our students. We also interact with our colleagues, yeah? And with ourselves as teachers. So often we are thinking about ourselves, we are thinking about our emotions, about who we are, but we do not always understand that we are doing that. So it is not always, this is not always taking place consciously, but rather unconsciously, okay? And now, something else that I have come across in a book from General Education by Chris Eyre is understanding our purpose. So he suggests that there are three types of questions. So we have the global question, we have the local question, and the personal question. So the global question, which is the very general one, the broadest one, is what is education for? Yeah? Thinking about the values or the goals of education as a whole. The local question, what is my job's purposes? Yeah? So what exactly am I supposed to do, or where is this taking me, etc. And the personal question is, what is my teacher shape? And he's using this, it's an acronym, yeah? And we'll see in the next screen what it actually means. So we start from the very general one, and we move to the very specific, which is ourselves as teachers. So by shape, he actually refers to these 5 dimensions. So S, which stands for school, H, which is heart, A, abilities, P, personality, and E, experiences. And I have included some examples of each of these aspects, which will help you to reflect a little bit on your own teacher shape. So by school, we refer to the context that we work in. Heart, you are passionate or excited about one specific aspect of your job or a number of aspects. Abilities, which refer to our strengths, what we think we are good at. Personality, extroverted teachers. We talk a lot about our learners' personalities, whether they are extroverted learners and introverted learners, they are shy in the classroom or they are too exuberant in class. There was an example, an interesting example in Sam's excerpts again, and we were talking in my group about that. That student who was very good at speaking, but quite lazy in class, yeah? And he would talk to other students in class, and he would distract the students from what's taking place in class. So we tend to focus on our learners' personalities, but it is also interesting to think of our own personality types as well. I have included just 2 examples, but there are of course a lot more. So I have included extrovert, calm here, but we could extend this list. And then our experiences. our life before teaching and our life outside of teaching. Yeah. So in your little groups, have a little chat about your own teacher shape. You can cover any of these 5 aspects, or all of them if you want, and what you think it is that only you can bring to the job. Okay? Okay.
Yeah. What's your worst quality? I care too much. I'm a perfectionist. That's you. I can't read every single thing. Energy. I have a colleague who comes in, and I mean, whenever just in a little classroom, laugh, very usually very so there's a lot of things that are outside of classroom. Yeah, I tried. Experience so I think organization for students is a time I say that's what for me. I don't think for me I can bring that. But I think it's years of experience with environments. Yeah. So you can very aware of the best to realize my students. And also when I don't know necessarily have to very hurtful. Different personality of the teacher who's like giving the same we all teach how to face down the table, so yeah, I still listen to videos, I'm like, but it also can be more like if you take time off or something. I kind of realize, like, even though you guys do like your sort of voice and classes, like, I think Siri can do it. Robots will do
Sorry to interrupt. So, is there anything that you discovered about yourself that you haven't thought about? And is there anything really interesting that you heard from your group members, from your colleagues, that you would like to share with us?
I think it's quite difficult to talk positively about yourself as a teacher sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds like an interview question. What is it that you can bring to the role?
Yeah.
But it's difficult if you're not when you're talking to other people about your teaching qualities, it's difficult to talk about the positive things that we often focus on the negative side of